Melania walked through the bustling airport, her steps deliberate but unhurried, her gaze scanning the crowd of travelers rushing past. Her simple outfit was understated, blending into the sea of people in the terminal. There were no cameras, no crowd of onlookers, just the everyday sounds of clattering luggage and murmurs of passengers. The hum of the airport was almost soothing, a reminder that today, she was just another traveler, navigating the busy space with no special attention. As she moved toward her gate, she noticed an elderly woman struggling near the check-in counter. The woman's hands trembled as she tried to lift her large suitcase, but it was too heavy for her fragile frame. She huffed with exertion, shifting the weight of the bag from one hand to the other, but it didn't budge. Her face, lined with years of wisdom, was filled with frustration. She looked around, but no one seemed to notice her struggle. Without a second thought, Melania stepped forward, her feet moving almost instinctively toward the woman. She didn't hesitate, not even for a second, as she gently placed a hand on the suitcase. "Let me help you with that," she said softly, her voice calm and reassuring. The elderly woman looked up, startled at first, and for a brief moment confusion flickered across her face. She studied Melania, unsure of the sudden gesture of kindness. But Melania's smile was warm, and in that moment, it was clear that the offer was genuine. The woman hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. "Thank you, dear," she said, her voice hoarse from the effort. With a gentle yet firm grip, Melania took hold of the suitcase, lifting it effortlessly, the weight no longer a burden. She moved it with ease, guiding it to the nearby check-in counter as the elderly woman walked beside her, a little more steady now. The woman's eyes were filled with gratitude, her lips trembling as if she couldn't quite find the words. "Thank you," the woman repeated, her voice soft but filled with emotion. Melania simply nodded, her smile never wavering. There were no grand words, no applause, just two people, a brief exchange, and a moment of human connection. The chaos of the airport seemed to fade around them as they walked, and for a brief instant, the world stood still, held together by something simple yet powerful: kindness. As they reached the check-in counter, the elderly woman's steps became more assured, her face softening as she looked at Melania, who was still holding the suitcase with an effortless ease. The woman's hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were filled with a warmth that had not been there before. She glanced up at Melania, her gratitude almost tangible. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice trembling, both from the weight of the suitcase and the kindness she had just received. "You don't know how much this means to me." Melania smiled, her expression gentle and understanding. "It's nothing," she replied, her voice calm, as if she had done nothing more than offer a seat to a tired traveler. Yet, in that moment, it was everything. The woman's vulnerability had connected them, transcending any differences that might have existed between them. It was a simple exchange, but it spoke volumes about the compassion that could exist in even the most ordinary of moments. The elderly woman paused, looking at Melania for a long moment. "I've been struggling with my health for some time now," she said, her voice quieter, her eyes drifting toward the ground for a moment, as though the weight of her words matched the weight of the suitcase she had struggled with. "It's hard to ask for help, especially in a place like this, where everyone is rushing about, caught up in their own lives." Melania listened intently, her gaze focused and full of empathy. She could hear the unspoken loneliness in the woman's voice, the exhaustion not just from the physical burden but from the emotional toll of always having to do things on her own. Melania stepped a little closer, adjusting the suitcase to make sure it was settled properly on the counter. "I understand," Melania said softly, "but it's okay to accept help. It doesn't make you weak. It just means you're human." The elderly woman looked at her, eyes wide, as if the weight of the moment had finally hit her. Her lips parted, but no words came at first. Instead, she smiled, a small, genuine smile that spoke of a deep, thankful connection. She was no longer just the tired, struggling woman with heavy luggage. She was a person who had been seen, truly seen, in a way that she hadn't been for a long time. "I've been on my feet all day," the woman continued, her voice softer now, her guard down. "And I was feeling so invisible, like no one cared. But you saw me. You didn't just pass by like everyone else." Melania's heart tightened, and she placed the suitcase down beside the woman. "Everyone deserves to be seen," she said quietly, "especially people like you, who have given so much in their lives." The elderly woman's eyes welled with tears, and for a moment, she just stood there looking at Melania, overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness. Her hand shook as she reached out, giving Melania's arm a gentle squeeze. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll never forget this. You've made this day so much easier, not just physically, but in my heart." Melania nodded, her smile warm and sincere. "It's my pleasure. I'm just happy to help." The moment wasn't about recognition or grandeur. It was about connection, about understanding that kindness was the bridge between people who might never otherwise meet, who might never otherwise notice each other. And in that fleeting, quiet exchange, Melania had reminded the elderly woman that no one was truly invisible, that there were always people out there willing to extend a hand when it was needed most. The elderly woman's hand lingered on Melania's arm for just a moment longer before she slowly let go, her eyes still shining with gratitude. They stood for a brief moment, the busy world of the airport swirling around them. But for those few seconds, everything seemed to fade into the background. It wasn't just the woman who was affected by this moment. It was everyone who had witnessed it. As Melania and the elderly woman continued toward the gate, a couple of nearby passengers, who had watched the exchange quietly from a distance, exchanged glances. A woman in her late 30s with a kind but weary face quietly pulled out her phone. She hesitated for only a second, her finger hovering over the camera button. She had just witnessed something unexpected, something that in a world so often consumed by noise and urgency, felt rare and real. The woman's fingers moved quickly over the screen, capturing the moment, not as a photograph for fame, but because it was a moment that needed to be remembered. A simple act of kindness in a place filled with strangers, a moment of humanity that couldn't be ignored. She shared the photo with a short caption, "A true reminder that kindness still exists in this world. This made my day. Kindness matters." Across the terminal, another man, younger than the woman but with a thoughtful look on his face, watched as Melania and the elderly woman walked together. His attention shifted from his own thoughts and the screen in front of him to the scene unfolding just feet away. The woman was still holding the suitcase with ease, and Melania, without any fanfare, remained by her side. He couldn't help but feel a wave of warmth at the sight. It wasn't just that Melania was helping. It was the way she did it. So naturally, without any sense of duty or obligation. It was simply about helping another person. The man, his eyes softened by the unexpected beauty of the moment, reached for his wallet. He hadn't planned on doing anything, certainly not in an airport where everyone was just trying to get from one place to another. But something about this act of kindness moved him deeply. He stepped forward, holding out a couple of bills to the elderly woman with a shy but sincere smile. "Here," he said. "I don't mean to intrude, but I think what she did for you is really special. Let me cover your lunch. I hope your day gets even better from here." The elderly woman blinked in surprise, her gaze darting from him to Melania, who simply nodded, her smile a gentle encouragement. "You're very kind," the woman said, her voice quivering slightly. "Thank you so much. It's been a long day and your kindness, well, it just means more than you could know." The man smiled back, his heart swelling. "It's nothing, really. Just paying it forward." As he turned to walk away, he couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. Sometimes it was the small, seemingly insignificant things that left the biggest mark on a person's soul. Helping this woman, inspired by what he had seen moments before, felt like something that would stay with him for a long time. Around the terminal, others had begun to notice the subtle shift in the air. Travelers, previously lost in their own worlds, now turned their attention to the unfolding scene. A few exchanged knowing glances. Others felt compelled to step in and contribute in their own quiet ways, offering assistance, sharing a smile, or simply pausing to acknowledge the unexpected warmth that had filled the space. And all the while, Melania remained in the background, her face serene, her actions simple, but profound. She didn't seek the spotlight, didn't look for a reaction. She had simply acted out of kindness, and in doing so, had unwittingly started a chain of events that rippled through the people around her. It was as if, in that single moment, everyone who had witnessed it had been reminded of something essential: that kindness, when shared, could change the energy of an entire room, a whole world even. The scene was simple, unremarkable in the grand scheme of things, yet it carried with it the weight of something much larger, a reminder that in a world filled with distractions and division, humanity still had the power to come together, to offer each other small but meaningful moments of connection. And those moments, shared in the most unlikely places, had the power to transform not just one life, but many. The moment Melania helped the elderly woman with her suitcase was brief, but it was far from forgotten. As the days passed, what had seemed like a quiet, almost unnoticed act of kindness began to grow, spreading far beyond the confines of the airport terminal. The photograph that had been shared by the woman who witnessed the exchange went viral almost immediately, touching hearts across the globe. Social media was buzzing with the story. The caption, simple but profound, read, "A true reminder that kindness still exists in this world. Melania Trump helping an elderly woman with her luggage at the airport. No cameras, no fanfare, just genuine compassion." The photo showed Melania with a soft smile, effortlessly helping the elderly woman lift the suitcase, their faces glowing with warmth and understanding. The image, devoid of any pomp or circumstance, struck a chord with thousands. Within hours, the post had been shared hundreds of times. Comments flooded in, expressing gratitude, admiration, and reflections on how such small acts of kindness could still make a difference in the world. Many shared their own stories of similar moments, where strangers had offered help, reminding everyone of the goodness that still existed in the world. "This is what the world needs more of," one comment read. "It's the simple acts that can restore our faith in humanity." Others were struck by how Melania had done something so selfless without any need for recognition. People took to social media to share how her quiet act had inspired them to be kinder, to slow down, and to notice the people around them who might need help. A young woman in New York shared how she had stopped to help an elderly man cross the street later that day, moved by what she had seen. "I want to be a part of this ripple," she wrote. "If we all helped just one person, imagine what we could do." In the quiet corners of the internet, blogs began writing about Melania's gesture, using it as an example of how kindness could spread, even when it wasn't tied to a cause or a public platform. Writers explored the impact of her simple act, discussing how it brought strangers together, offering a collective sense of hope. Some compared it to the larger, more public acts of charity, but argued that it was this type of understated kindness, done without thought of gain, that made the most profound impact. Meanwhile, Melania, unaware of the growing attention surrounding her act of kindness, went about her days as usual. She never sought the spotlight, never looked for praise. Her quiet, humble gesture was rooted in a genuine desire to help, not to be seen. But as the story spread, it reached her eventually. Friends and family mentioned it, and she found herself touched by the response. She never expected this kind of reaction, but it was clear that her small act had inspired something much larger than she could have imagined. The elderly woman, too, began receiving messages. She was amazed by how people from all walks of life had been moved by the simple, everyday interaction she had shared with Melania. She received phone calls from people she hadn't heard from in years, messages from strangers who wanted to thank her for reminding the world about the power of kindness. Her phone buzzed nonstop, with people reaching out to share their own acts of kindness, inspired by the story. "Your story brought me to tears," one message read. "Thank you for being a part of something so beautiful." What started as one moment of simple compassion between two strangers had now touched thousands, becoming a reminder to people everywhere that kindness wasn't just a fleeting emotion. It was a transformative power that had the ability to bring people together, to inspire change, and to remind the world that humanity still had a heart. And so, the ripple continued to spread, each new person touched by the story adding their own small act of kindness to the world. What began as a single moment at an airport had grown into a movement, proof that kindness, when shared, can become a force stronger than any headline or trend. As the days went by, the impact of Melania's simple act of kindness continued to resonate in ways that neither she nor the elderly woman could have imagined. The story, now viral, became a symbol of the power of small, selfless actions, But it wasn't just the social media posts or the comments that had left a mark. It was the deeper, more personal reflections that began to unfold. Melania quietly watched as the world around her responded. She had never expected recognition or fanfare for her actions. They were done purely from a place of empathy, a recognition of the need in someone else. Yet, as the ripple effect grew, she was touched by how a single moment of compassion had encouraged so many others to reflect on their own lives and their own actions. The elderly woman, who had once felt invisible, now carried a renewed sense of worth. She realized that the kindness she had experienced wasn't rare, it was a universal human quality. She began sharing her story with others, offering her own words of encouragement to those who had reached out to her. "We all have the power to make someone's day brighter," she would say, "and we should never underestimate the impact of kindness." Melania, in her quiet way, had reminded the world that kindness didn't need to be broadcast for it to matter. It didn't need a grand stage or applause. Sometimes it was enough to simply help someone in need, without expectation or recognition. And as the story continued to spread, it became clear that the world was listening. What had started as a small act had turned into a movement, a reminder that we could all do a little more, just by choosing kindness. As the story faded from the headlines, its impact lingered in the hearts of those who had been touched by Melania's simple act of kindness. What had started as an unexpected moment between two strangers had evolved into a movement, a global reminder that kindness could be transformative. For Melania, the quiet echo of that day was a humbling reminder that the smallest gestures could have the biggest impact. She never set out to inspire a movement, yet her willingness to help had sparked something that was far beyond her intention. People all around the world, inspired by her example, began to reflect on their own actions and the difference they could make in the lives of others. It wasn't just about helping the elderly woman. It was about the ripple effect that kindness created, spreading from one person to another, creating a sense of unity and compassion that transcended all boundaries. The elderly woman, once again, had become a symbol of resilience and grace. She, too, had been forever changed. She realized that kindness wasn't something that only came from the extraordinary. It was in the everyday actions of ordinary people. And she had become part of a story that would continue to inspire others for years to come. As the world continued to move on, the lesson remained. Kindness is powerful, and every one of us has the ability to change someone's world with a simple act. So, what about you? What small act of kindness can you offer today? Let Melania's gesture inspire you to pay it forward, to brighten someone's day, to make the world just a little bit better. Share your story, inspire others, and continue the chain of kindness. The world needs it now more than ever.